everyone, hello. Welcome to the Mancos Wellness Talks. I'm Victoria Peterson and I'm with Cloud Goddess Enterprises. And I organize these Mancos Wellness Talks. This year's series is about aging with grace and wellness. And tonight is our second talk of the series, and it is on brain health and mental wellness. And we have Anna Pierotti here from Alpenglow Therapy, so let's welcome Anna. Thank you.
Thanks, Victoria. Victoria was awesome. She reached out and was like, do you want to do a presentation? I was like, oh, I love hearing the sound of my own voice. So obviously I said yes right away. Okay, so presentation today, we're going to be talking about the cognitive and mental health side of aging, right? And so last time we had a wonderful thing on like the physical nature. I think there's a perimenopause one coming up in menopause. And so, it's a really good opportunity to figure out how we can age with grace and wellness. And a lot of people are like, oh yeah, that's for me. And yes, it's for you, but it's for everyone, right? If we have an infant in the crowd and if we have elderly in the crowd, every single person is aging every single day, right? Our brain is constantly growing and evolving. And even when it hits that sweet growth spot, like around 23 years old, it still changes, right? Especially if they kind of say around 7 years, you kind of get a little bit of change every 7 years too. And so if you start to notice some weird cognitive stuff or weird mental health stuff or weird new tastes or strange new passions, hey, your brain is growing, it's developing, and that's kind of one of the wonderful parts of life. Just a little overview on what we're going to be covering. Kind of who am I, right? Intro of me. Statistics, because I want to make sure to scare everyone before we get to the rest of the presentation. Why cognitive and brain health matters, why mental health matters. I can't talk about mental health without just like giving a little bit of education on depression signs plus local resources, or else I wouldn't be a good therapist. And then these two sections, this is where we're going to get into the real big part where it's the coping tools on how to maintain good cognitive health and how to maintain good mental health, right? And so this is the sweet spot where we're going to learn a lot of stuff. Then we're going to do an activity. So if you thought you were done with school or filling out worksheets, you were wrong, because I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist and we're famous for giving out homework. And so everyone will have a pen, so if you guys want to join the table at that time to, be able to sit down and have something to write on. But you can use the answers from the presentation, so you don't have to memorize anything, and you can work together. So group projects are allowed. Great, and then at the end I say thank you, and then if you want to read where all my citations came from, because that's your thing, I've got those on there as well. And I'll be giving the presentation to Victoria, and as well as the PDF of the mental and cognitive health game plan, so that if you wanted an extra copy to give to someone, or you just really love it and want to fill it out again, then you're going to have it. Great. Let's see here. Yeah, this is me. I'm Anna Pierotti. Okay, so reason why I'm here is I'm a licensed professional counselor. I practice in both Colorado and Utah, so I'm licensed in both states. I did just open up a business in April, so I'm a local business owner. My office is downtown Mancos in the Bauer building, so I'm right above Artisans of Mancos in that nice little sweet spot. So I do in-person and I do telehealth. I am a cognitive behavioral therapist as well as a somatic psychotherapist. And so kind of what that means is the somatic psychotherapy is the brain-body connection, which makes me a really good fit for this presentation, YouTube. And it's also a good fit for therapy because our brain and our body cannot be unlinked. And so when our brain is struggling with mental health, our body is going to struggle with physical health. If we are struggling with our physical health, we're going to struggle with our mental health. They really cannot be disconnected. And so if we're just paying attention to what our body needs and what our brain needs, and we're not paying attention to the mental health piece, we're going to be missing out on a big section, right? So that's why the somatic psychotherapy part is such a big piece. And then the cognitive behavioral therapy is really just taking care of the brain, the behaviors, paying attention to how we are thinking about ourselves, others, situations, and trying to be able to change that through thoughts and behaviors. All of my therapy too is trauma informed. I do neurodivergent affirming care. I do gender affirming care, and yeah, great therapist. I am local to Southwest Colorado. I'm not technically local to Mancos, but I'm just right over the hill in Durango. So I grew up in Durango, enjoying the area. Moved away, explored, found my husband in Utah. He's the one with the beard. And then we decided to move back to be closer to family. And we didn't want to be in big Durango because we had lived in a town that was smaller than Mancos. So Mancos was actually bigger than where we last came from. So it's perfect size for us. Really love the art and the community. And yeah, the fact that we do Mancos wellness talks and things like that is perfect. You know, a community that focuses on health and wellness and art and community. Yeah, I'm a typical Colorado person, love whitewater rivers and lakes and picnics and hiking with the dog and listening to live music and mushroom foraging, all of those normal things that all Colorado people love to do, right? Anyone else here get outside? Yeah, I figured there'd be a couple, if not everyone. Right, and I'm also a person who's actively aging, right? Because like I said in the beginning of the presentation, every single one of us is aging. Now we may be at different stages of aging, especially cognitively, right, and physically, but we are still aging, and one section is not necessarily worse or better than the other. It's just life, right? Okay, so this is the scary part, right? That scares you, and then we come in with the coping tools at the end. Basically I put up some statistics just to kind of bring awareness to the fact that mental health and cognitive decline and cognitive health itself, it really is an all-encompassing thing, right? It's not just for young people. It's not just for old people. It's for everyone across the board. I know I've run into some people who's like, oh, you're a therapist? Oh, the kids these days, man, their mental health, they are crazy and blah, blah, blah. I was like, no. This has been around for a long time, right? People had learned to kind of shut it down, so then it would pop up somewhere else, right? Because yeah, if we have these huge feelings or big stuff, it doesn't just go away, right? It'll pop up in somewhere else if we don't deal with it. Like, let's say grief. If you just shut down all the grief and you don't notice it, right? It might pop up later and you yell at a grocery store clerk. Or you cry over, dropping your camera on the ground, right? Something happens like that, right? So it doesn't just go away. More than 1 in 5 US adults have mental illness, right? And so that's a pretty significant statistic in its own, right? And that means if we take a look around at the room, we have mental illness in the room, right? Yeah, I know, right? Victoria does. Right? But it's just kind of the fact of it. We have mental illness, and it doesn't have to be a scary thing. I think it used to be a scary thing, but now it's just kind of more of a thing of like, oh, okay, hey, your brain works a little bit differently? Great. Or, oh, you've had some hardships in your life that have made you to struggle now? Like, okay, not too scary. We can work with it. And especially as we get open and we talk about it, it's not going to be as scary. It is definitely more prevalent in young adults, which does make sense too, because the brain is still developing at that age and hormones are still trying to regulate, right? And they don't stay regulated for long, because then you get older and then they dysregulate. But yeah, so age 18 to 25, highest prevalence of acute mental illness, coming in at 33.7% of the population compared to adults aged 26 through 49. And then ages 50 and older, that's 15% of the population, right? And so that means, 15% of adults ages 60 and over suffer from a mental disorder. So it's not adults, it's not the elderly, it's just everyone. It affects everyone. And some people might struggle with it more at some parts of their life, some might struggle at later parts of their life. Mental and neurological disorders among older adults account for 6.6% of the total disability for this age group. So that means, not being able to go to work, getting on disability. And then this one is kind of a scary statistic in itself. Globally, the population is aging rapidly. So the world's population of over 60 years will nearly double from 12% to 22%, right? And so that means that mental health resources are going to see a big shift into, working right now where it's a lot of young adults, middle-aged adults. You're going to see a big shift in kind of elderly mental health care. Right?
I have a birthday on Friday.
Yeah, there you go. And then last but not least, 43% of seniors regularly experience loneliness. So I put this in here too because it doesn't need to be necessarily labeled depression or anxiety or bipolar, anything that sounds really serious to be a mental health concern, right? Has anyone here visited like a grandparent or a parent or someone in a memory care center or a retirement home or something like that? And they look at you and they're like, you never visit. I'm so lonely. And you just visited maybe a couple days ago, right? And so it's not necessarily, it's the loneliness. It's this all-encompassing piece that's, even if you're visiting, there's still that growth, that mental health decline that does happen when you age. And so that, loneliness can be a big part of that. Right, so all across the board. Okay, so cognitive/brain health. So brain health is going to be the umbrella term, and then cognitive health is underneath the umbrella of brain health. And so cognitive health is what I'm focusing on, right? And there's a piece, right, emotional function that ties into mental wellness. But cognitive health, right, really goes well with the therapy piece, so that's what we're focusing on. But the cognitive health is going to affect everything else under the brain umbrella. And so cognitive health, right, that's how we think, we learn, we remember, that's how we interact, and that's how we're humans, right? And so it's vital for every single thing we do, whether it's with friends, whether it's at work, whether you are sitting in a presentation listening, right? You have to have that good cognitive health and good brain health. It's necessary for everyday well-being. So, underneath the umbrella of brain health, right? Cognitive, think, learn, remember. Motor function, so controlling movements and balance. Emotional function, so how we interpret and respond or react to emotions, whether they be pleasant or unpleasant. Tactile function, how we feel and respond to sensations of touch, pressure, pain, things like that. And so anytime one of these goes into an imbalance, it's definitely possible that it can affect the other pieces, right? And we need every single one of these to wake up and move around and live every day, right? So keeping the brain nice and healthy is an important piece of aging. And so for cognitive decline, it sounds like a scary word, but it's a lot of people are going through cognitive decline, and cognitive decline can be affected by a lot of different things. You can get cognitive decline from infections, head injuries. Cognitive decline can also come from depression, medication side effects, thyroid disorders, vitamin deficiencies, other diseases and conditions like multiple sclerosis, lupus, Alzheimer's, chronic alcohol and drug use, especially alcohol, that's causes a big neuroinflammation, and so any thing that is causing inflammation to the brain is going to affect that cognitive piece. And then of course age, right? And those are just a few. Like there was a crazy long list, and if you really want to nerd out, you can go to the citations page and you can go find that citation, and then you can go read the whole article. But right, and so in this room, I bet every single person has someone who has struggled with one of the following, right? Whether it be chronic illness or pain, vitamin deficiencies, infections, brain trauma, right? If anyone here has or knows anyone who's had a concussion or traumatic brain injury, that's going to affect cognitive function quite significantly. Yeah. All right, mental health, why it matters. Right, so it's literally what helps us enjoy life and perform daily tasks. It's how we interact with other people. It's how we It's how we love, it's how we make friends, it's how we be okay with colleagues when they really piss us off, right? It's, and I don't have any colleagues because I work alone, so. But my boss can piss me off quite a bit, so not so lucky, she's kind of hard. But yeah, so, it affects every piece of thing, and then mental health issues can lead to the physical health issues, and vice versa. So for example, if we have older adults with physical conditions like a heart disease and chronic pain have higher rates of depression than those who are healthy. And then it goes the other way around too. So if you have depression and you're healthy before that, you get depression, you can have physical issues after that, right? So it can lead to memory problems, weight fluctuations, fatigue, increased pain sensitivity, constricted blood vessels. There's some kidney issues that can happen, weakened immune system, right? And it can lead to stuff, especially with the constricted blood vessels, right? That can also lead to heart problems, things like that, right? And so it really goes full circle. And it goes back to what I said at the beginning of the presentation. If we only take care of one and we don't take care of the other, we're gonna be a little lopsided, right? And the cycle is still gonna keep happening. Right, a lot of people with mental health issues, right, can struggle getting into the workforce, can struggle successfully holding down jobs, and so we see a lot of people who are struggling to get jobs or to fill positions, things like that. And so, mental health care on top of that would be really good for kind of getting people back out there as well. Let's see here, untreated mental health conditions often can lead to disability. So not being able to work if, their conditions are getting extreme. And then of course it can be life-threatening in cases like suicide or self-harm, which is really not as uncommon as people think. And so, yeah, if we prioritize our mental health, we can definitely lead to a happier and healthier life. Okay, depression signs, right? I would be a bad therapist if I didn't mention depression, even though this talk isn't about depression. If anyone has any, kids going into school, if anyone is watching after grandkids, if you yourself are experiencing these symptoms, or you have a friend or colleague and some of these symptoms look familiar, it's a good thing to keep an eye on, right? Because some of these are common when they're isolated, but when they're all in a group, right, that's when it becomes concerning. And the other important thing is the severity of the symptoms, right? Is it affecting their ability to work or go to school or have a good relationship with their kids or spouse? And so the severity is what makes these really intense. It's not the symptoms on their own. But yeah, hopeless outlook on life, loss of interest in daily activities, increased fatigue and sleep issues, anxiety, nervousness, and restlessness. So yeah, it's fun. You get depression and then you get anxiety-free. Yeah, it's not a fun prize to win. Changes in appetite and weight, mood swings, reckless behavior, difficulty concentrating. And reckless behavior is too, it's one to look out for. Well, we live in Colorado, a lot of people do outdoor sports. So our reckless is kind of on a different scale than other people, but it's still a good thing to look out for because it might mean the difference of, a friend who always goes backcountry skiing and usually goes with a buddy, takes all the stuff that they need, right? Helmet, probe, all of the stuff that they need, right? And maybe is going out now alone and is not taking all the necessary things, right? Let's see here. And then one that's not on here is kind of withdrawing. I don't think that one's on here. Yeah, but withdrawing, so maybe not doing stuff, especially frequently. Like we can all have our days where, we don't want to do something. That's normal, but if it's something consistent, they're withdrawing socially, they're isolating themselves, right? That's something to be concerned about. And then if you want to take a picture of this, it's just good to have on hand. But these are the local crisis support numbers in the area. So Access Healthcare has a hotline and it's manned 24/7. And so the hotline, it has a therapist on call. And so I actually know friends who work for the hotline. And so you'll always reach someone and then they'll be able to kind of connect you, either help you in the moment or help connect you to mental health resources. So even let's say if you have a friend that's struggling, this is a good number to call to see if there's any resources in the area available for them. And then 988, this is a nationwide line, and this one's cool, you can text or call, right? So, you know, if you're in a place where you can't call, but you can text, you know, it can be pretty private. Yeah, or you can call at any time, and there's no full number, it's just the number's 988. There's also the Grief Centers of Southwest Colorado. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's one in Durango and one in Cortez. And then they can help you with resources as well. And then of course the Sexual Assault Services Organization is a good one to call if someone has experienced a sexual assault and needs to know next steps, needs help care or guidance. And I know we don't like to think about these things, but you guys are in a mental health talk, so I mean, you're definitely willing, so thank you. And yeah, great numbers to keep in your phone just in case. All right, now we get to the good part, right? So these are where all the coping skills come into action, right? First thing up here, we've got coping tools, which means that every other thing that we have here is going to be a coping tool for mental health. First off, right, ways to maintain good mental health are know what coping tools work for you. And the good thing about coping tools, they don't have to work every single time, they just need to work, right? And so if you have a list of them, then if one coping tool doesn't work for you, then move to another coping tool. Because it doesn't mean that coping tool doesn't work anymore. It just means that right now it's not working, and we'll still keep it on the list, and maybe next time that will be the helpful thing for you. So coping tools are also kind of like self-care practices, right? So anything that you can use when your emotions become overwhelming. Because there's no such thing as a good or a bad emotion. There's just, we like to call it adaptive and maladaptive emotion, right? Is the emotion helping you or is it hurting you, right? Because like sadness, that's not a bad emotion. Like we need sadness in our life. I know it's not a fun emotion. The same thing with anxiety. Like there's no way I would have gotten where I am without anxiety. Like I needed it to help me finish papers, to get to places on time, right? You know, like so little doses of these things are okay, but it's when the emotion becomes overwhelming and affects your life, that's when we need to pay attention to it and realize that, hey, this level, this severity, that's not normal.
I like to think of it as a toolbox.
Yeah, yep.
You got these tools.
Exactly. And with the toolbox analogy too, you've got to keep your tools sharp. So if you're not using your tools and you're not keeping them sharp and maintaining, it's going to be harder to use them when you actually need them. Yeah. So nice, like the toolbox. So one of the coping tools for maintaining mental health is routine. I think a lot of people learned this over COVID, right? If you're isolating at home and you're quarantining and you didn't really have any routine in place, it got really difficult really quickly because we need that stability and we need familiarity. And so things to add into your routines can be coping tools, they can be exercise, they can be calling a friend or a family member, just something that you do on a regular basis that helps give you some of that stability, right? So some people need their morning shower. That's something you can put in the routine. Or some people can't function during the day if they don't have a walk with their dog, or their dog can't function if they don't have a walk with their dog, right? You know, yeah, have you ever seen a dog get out of a routine? They don't like it. If you walk them every day and then you stop one day, like, they're gonna be pretty upset, right? But us too, we need that stability. Socializing, right? So mental health wise, yeah, even if we're introverts, we do need some socialization, because if we just completely isolate, it's not very healthy for us, right? And so it can further exacerbate symptoms of depression or anxiety or any other mental disorders like bipolar or schizophrenia or anything like that. And so it can get pretty intense once we skip out of that. So if you notice that your mood is low, it might be time to go out and socialize. But one thing that I always say with socialization is make sure it's someone who fills your cup, right? Has anyone hung out with someone and then they came back from that person completely drained? Yes, everyone laughs. I hope it's not me, because I do have some family here. But yeah, so you kind of got to watch out for who you socialize with when you are in a struggling mental health space. So you want to go hang out with that person who fills your cup, who makes you happy, who you leave that meeting being like, oh, like, I feel joy, that was great, I have more energy, I'm going to go clean the house, right? But
I have
you want
a friend who, like, taught me, serve from the saucer, not the cup.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, serve from the overflow.
Yes, I love that, right? And so, great example. Yeah, so make sure you're mindful of who you're socializing with. Let's see here, engaging in any activities that bring you joy or relaxation. And so adjust the activities to your current ability. So, you know, if you're having some cognitive decline or deficits, right, you can't do what you used to, like let's say you used to go kayaking on whitewater, right? Maybe you can still go kayaking, but maybe it's on a lake with some friends, right? You know, maybe there's some adjustments that we can make. And so we have to do that sometimes, right? Or even mental health wise, maybe you don't have the energy because depression and anxiety and mental disorders can bring such fatigue. So maybe you don't have the energy to go do, you know, mountain biking, but you can ride your bike around Mancos, right? And enjoy the day still, right? So adjust as necessary, but get out and get moving, get engaging. That brings us to exercise 2. I'm sure the last person who did the Mancos Wellness Talks hit this really hard, but exercising literally does some amazing things to our brain. The amount of wonderful free drugs that our brain produces when we exercise is quite incredible. And so if we are exercising, anything you do is going to affect your thoughts and emotions, right? And so an exercise can be a great thing because not only is that activity itself going to affect your thoughts and emotions in a positive way, but you're going to get free, wonderful chemicals that are going to flood your brain when you do exercise. And it doesn't have to be high intensity exercise. It can be mellow, like Qigong or Tai Chi, yoga, anything gentle, stretching, just some sort of exercise. Actually, another great thing for your mental health that gives you a whole bunch of free brain chemicals is crying. So don't stop yourself from crying. It literally, it's a wonderful gift you can give to yourself for mental health, right? Cry and then let your brain do the work. Okay, let your brain give you some of those yummy free drugs and chemicals, right, that are healthy, good for your brain, don't cause neuroinflammation, all of that fun stuff. Mindfulness practices are another good coping tools. This could be deep breathing, it could be meditation, it could be opening up a meditation app, like I think Calm is a popular app right now, where you can listen to like progressive muscle relaxation or meditation audios. Things like that. So anything that brings you from being up in your head and it all scrabbled, right, to being in your body, in the thoughts right now, and being mindful of what you're thinking and what you're doing, can be great because the world is crazy. We do a lot of things, we think a lot of things, and if we can just take a break and slow down and just really get in touch with ourselves, it can help with a lot of the mental health issues, right? Talking and journaling is another good thing. So don't just process your emotions by thinking. Make sure you process your emotions by talking to someone or getting those thoughts down on paper or getting your thoughts down. If there's anyone here who's an artist, right? Put your emotions through your art and be mindful of what you're expressing in your art. Do something that gets the thoughts out of your brain is basically the thing, right? Because thinking is only one way of processing. Let's add another form of processing to the thinking, right? Self-talk, right? How you talk to yourself is so important, right? We are all our own worst critic, and oftentimes our brain goes to really negative places, right? You know, like if we think about, you know, high school bullies, I think I was my own high school bully, right? Because oftentimes we can get really mean to ourselves and we kind of learn, but sometimes we don't catch ourselves as much. So being able to adjust our self-talk when we are really negative can be really helpful. And shifting the negative thoughts to not just positive thoughts. That's actually not what therapy is about. People think, oh, we turn negative thoughts into positive thoughts. I actually hate that. Not a thing. We turn negative thoughts into realistic and helpful thoughts. And if it happens to be positive, that's just the sprinkle on top, right? But if we just turn it positive, like, we're too smart for that. You know, if my thought in the morning is, oh, work is going to be so tough, there's so many things going on, I'm never going to be able to do it. And if I just change that to, work is going to be great, I'm going to have a great day, everything's going to be great, right? I'm too smart for that. I'm not going to believe that, right? So I got to turn it into something realistic, right? So maybe it's, okay, yeah, work is gonna be difficult today. I know I do have a stressful day, but I have survived 100% of stressful days at work. And I know the coworkers I'm working with, and they're wonderful and helpful, and I've got enough coping tools to make this day, right? That's realistic thinking, right? And helpful thinking. Okay, healthy eating. We've got our brain, and we've got our gut brain. And so making sure that what we're feeding ourselves is definitely a good thing for both mental and cognitive health. There's a lot of, and so when I do therapy, when we talk about food, it's not for weight loss, it's for mental health. And so we have to make that shift in our brain that, we're not doing this for weight loss, because that can be kind of triggering for some people, right? We've been on diets for years. And so we do wellness weight loss for wellness, because they've done a whole bunch of studies with people with depression, and they have a lot of similar vitamin deficiencies, like vitamin B's, omega-3s, fatty acids, amino acids, things like that. And then the last thing, professional help. Don't be shy. Go before things get severe. One of the things that I think people think is that they have to go to therapy only when things get really, really bad. And then of course the therapist is like, oh gosh, why, we could have done this like a month ago, got a head start, right? So don't think that you need to go to therapy if everything is going wrong. There's a lot of people who come to therapy when everything is going right, and they're just helping prepare for the next step. Like maybe they're opening up a business, or their kids are going off to college and they haven't gone yet, but why not get prepared ahead of time, right? And so it's about kind of the preparation instead of reacting to the situation. So no one is too old for therapy, no one's too young for therapy, and no one is too severe or too not severe, right? Anyone can go and get help from therapy. And so, yeah. And if you go, it serves as an example for the other people in your life to go to therapy as well. Okay, cognitive health, right? So a lot of the things from mental health still apply to the cognitive health side. So just so you know, the coping tools, they're kind of interchangeable, because what you do for your physical health, right, is going to be good for your cognitive, or mental health is going to be good for your cognitive health. Right, we talked about physical exercise before, especially physical exercise when it comes to cognitive health is going to increase your blood to the brain. And so, and that's a good thing. We want blood up there, right? And so having that increase can be really wonderful, right? And so, if you are having some sort of exercise routine, remember, it doesn't need to be intense at all. Just moving your body, that's going to be helping your cognitive health, right? Learning new things, that's a huge one, right, to help your brain. Challenging yourself by learning things like a new language, musical instrument. It could be going out, we've got pickleball courts, if you haven't used the pickleball courts yet, learn a new sport, be able to go out, volunteer, learn a new trade, get out into the workforce into something that you haven't done before, like go be a barista. Something that's getting your brain to engage in a new way is going to create new neural pathways, and it's, great for the brain. Socializing, I know that was on both ones, but it still is really, really important, right? If there's someone especially who's aging, right, and as you age, all of a sudden you have less friends. Sometimes because people move away, sometimes it's because, people are naturally just dying, right? And so all of a sudden you become more isolated, or maybe your family's moved away. And so it's important to be able to socialize, because it affects so many parts of our life. And if you socialize, it can also decrease the developing Alzheimer's later in life. And if you don't socialize and you're isolating, right, mental health's going to decline, and cognitive health will decline. So memory problems are going to get worse. Being able to figure out problem solving is going to get worse. And that's all just from not being social, right? We just need we're social people. Even if we're introverts, we do need some sort of socialization. And so if we take that away, it really affects us on a cognitive decline pretty quickly. Body health, right? So, you know, not a doctor, not giving you any medical advice, but if you do avoid excessive smoking and alcohol consumption, right, that can have negative effects on cognitive function. And of course, like I mentioned, neuroinflammation can come from stuff, especially like alcohol, that's a big inflamer. So making sure that you're taking care of your body, right, if you want your brain to keep sharp, right? And if this is more important than keeping your brain sharp, you know, like that's your prerogative, but just know that it really does make a difference. Reducing any sort of stress that you have, right? And that could be quitting a job, you know, and moving to a different job that's less stressful. That could be getting help in the house, right? Let's say there's things too stressful, you have kids, grandkids, things are too chaotic, you can't keep up with the house. Reduce if it's making you too stressed, right? Those elevated cortisol levels aren't going to be helpful. And so it's better to have lower cortisol levels and have help than have too high of cortisol levels and see cognitive decline, right? I mean, well, I guess you can decide what's better for you, but I think I'd rather have lower cortisol levels. Let's see here, intellectual challenges. So that is anything that, again, engages you intellectually. I like to think of stuff like Sudoku, crossword puzzles. What are the ones? Wordles or Wordle? Anyone Wordle? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got some Wordles in here, right? That's great for your cognitive function. Brain or logic puzzles. If people actually, I've got some of the logic puzzles for people to take home if you want a bit of a challenge. But anything that kind of, I know you know what these are. She was a gifted and talented teacher, so. But yeah, logic puzzles. Actually, these logic puzzles, I've seen them used too in occupational therapists right after brain strokes, right, or traumatic brain injuries. They often use like really easy puzzles to start out with to kind of see where your cognitive function's at, and then they'll kind of use these as a form of an assessment to see where you're at. So if you like the sound of that challenge, I've got copies up here.
So my son, you remember Rubik's Cubes?
Yes.
They're like the 3-dimensional puzzles. He just bought a whole pack and they're in the mail, but they make them, they're not just like cubes anymore. They're like all these weird funky shapes that have multiple surfaces, and I can't wait until he gets them because I can't even do the Rubik's Cube. Right? This is like a real challenge for your brain, so
I know.
I'm trying it.
Yeah, no, Rubik's Cube. I used to have a friend who, it was his nightly ritual to do a Rubik's Cube before bed. And so he couldn't go to sleep until he finished it, but he could finish it in like 2 minutes. So it wasn't like that big of a deal, but it took him a while to get to that point. But yeah, Rubik's Cubes are a great thing. Anyone else have any puzzle ideas or apps on their phone that they use? Yeah, that's okay. We'll have time to kind of brainstorm that. I know Chad uses one that's called Fill, right? That one's really good. It's kind of a puzzle where you trace around and you have to get it from one end to the other. That's harder than you think it is, right? So anything that kind of challenges you and makes you look at something differently in order to figure out the problem, right? Because those are going to be firing some lovely brain synapses, making neural connections, good things like that. Organization, great for cognitive health as well. Reducing clutter in your home, in your house, in your workplace. It can improve focus and function. And some people cannot organize and clean, and so it's okay to ask for help, right? I think that's going to be a common theme for everything. Like if you can't do it, that's okay. Like let's invite someone in the house that can help, whether it be a family member, a friend, whether it be paying for a service to come in and help. You know, it's just one more step that you can do, taking care of the space around you to take care of your brain itself. Sleep. Sleep is how your brain repairs itself, right? So our brain does not do repairing when we are awake. It is doing everything else. It is keeping us, you know, breathing, functioning, looking, listening, talking, walking, right? It's doing so much. It does not have time to repair itself during the day, right? So sleep is not just good because we feel good when we sleep a good night, but it's also what helps our brain help repair itself so it can start a new day fresh, right? So if we have if we're not getting enough sleep nightly, or we're getting really poor quality of sleep, let's say for even things like sleep apnea, and you're not using the proper, tools to help your sleep apnea, it's going to affect your brain, with sleep apnea because of the breathing and the breath and the oxygen to the brain, because remember that's an important thing. But it's going to make you at a deficit for the next day, and so then your brain has to work twice as hard and try to repair again, and then if you don't get a good night's sleep then it's keeping on, it's never going to win, right? So we need to have the good sleep in order to function. And one thing to also note, especially since this presentation is on aging, melatonin is a naturally produced hormone that we have in our bodies. And so every single person produces melatonin. But as we get older, the melatonin starts to decrease. And so there are supplements, I'm sure everyone has heard of melatonin, you can get it over the counter. Melatonin is not really necessary for kids because they are chock full of melatonin, right? And even young adults, chock full. But as you get older, you start to see the hormone production decline. And so you can always talk to your doctor and see if it's necessary to do melatonin. I think it's called the vampire hormone. Because it's sundown. So melatonin does not help with the quality of sleep, it helps with the timing of sleep. So some people take it and they're like, whoa, I woke up like I always do. And it's like, that's not gonna help with that. It's gonna help with the timing of sleep, so making you go to sleep. So that's what melatonin does. So if you're struggling with that, it might be okay to talk to your doctor and see if that's something for you. And then of course, I'm always gonna say professional help. Sometimes things get too big for us to use coping tools, and there's no shame in getting help from other people. I always put a note here too, because some people have kind of a stigma against medication, right? I know I've got a family member who's really big on saying, well, I've left my whole life without medication, and I'm not going to go on medication now. I'm going to get off of it as soon as I can. It's like, well, if it's helping you and it's increasing your quality of life, there's no shame in taking it. That's okay. You can still do lifestyle changes plus the medication, and hey, no shame in the medication game. If you need it for blood sugar, if you need it for heart conditions, if you need it for anything, it's okay, right? Same thing goes for mental health, right? It just sometimes, especially for mental health, maybe everyone's brain is not at the start line, right? Maybe you have, bipolar that's been passed down, for a few generations, because it can be familiar, right? And so maybe you're not at the starting line as everyone else, you're way back behind, and maybe getting on the medication can help you get to where everyone else is starting at, right? Or like ADHD medication. Not a bad thing, it's just, hey, it's not for everyone, and it is for you, great. All right, okay, so now we jump into the homework that I promised. So what we've got here is it's a mental and cognitive health game plan, and then if you could pass that on. Okay, so what this is it's a worksheet, and it's got a few different sections on it. What I want to do is, if I give a presentation, I want to make sure everyone's walking away with something that's going to be useful, right? So I never give out homework that's not useful. Okay, so it has a few different sections. So there's a part where it's activities to keep my brain sharp. It has, let's see here, coping tools for my mental health, signs my mental health is declining. It has affirmations for I'm feeling low, people I can reach out for support, and what I'm grateful for. So one of the things that I want to, so make sure when you fill this out, especially when it's the people I can reach out to, grab your phones and put down their specific name, their relation to you, and their phone number. And then be as specific as possible with the coping tools and the gratitudes, right? So let's say it is coping tools for my mental health. Don't just put exercise, put how you want to exercise, right? So maybe it's a 15-minute walk at the dog park. Maybe it's getting on your bike and, doing a ride around town. So be as specific as you can. let's see here, affirmations. So those are the kind of positive, helpful self-talk I was talking about. So, you know, what are things you can tell yourself when you're feeling low, right? You know, it could be something like, you know, I'm more powerful than I think I am, or I am smart, I'm intelligent, you know, I can do this, or, you know, I've survived 100% of bad days that I've had, you know, whatever it may be. Yeah, and then there's a place for any notes you want to do. Would anyone like me to go back to any slides to help?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay, well just let me know if you need it. And then feel free to talk to one another about this. Don't be shy, you can do group work and you can look at the presentation, so it's all good. Do you have one?
Yes.
All right, well we are 2 minutes till 7, so I don't want to go over and take advantage of your time. Yeah, feel free to take these, and what I want you to do with them is finish them if you haven't gotten to finish them, so take them home. And then it's a great one to put on your fridge, right? Because if we have a visual reminder of the good things that we need to do to maintain our good cognitive and emotional health, right? Visual reminders, why not? If it's just floating up here in the brain, we've got so many things that we need to remember and we need to think of that, you know, anything that we can have that is visual is going to be helpful. So put it on the fridge, right? And then if you want any extra copies, my website is on my business cards. My business cards and a whole bunch of stickers are on that table over there. If you go to my website, one of the tabs is called resources or free resources, I forgot which one. But anyway, it has a whole bunch of worksheets that I've made, kind of like this, but are all based around mental health, whether it's be anxiety or depression. I've got ones that are a daily wellness log that you can fill out and kind of track, like, what coping tools, are you drinking enough water, what are your goals for the day, things like that. And all of those resources are free to download and print off. Because yeah, we don't have enough free things in the world, so why not have some free things on the website, especially if they're mental health wise. So I will add this worksheet to there by Friday. So that'll be up, and then check out the other free mental health resources as well. And then I believe this presentation will go up on Cloud Goddess's website. Yeah. Grab my card so you can grab the website so you can grab those free downloads. And then, yeah, if you have any questions or concerns, my contact is on there. And it was a pleasure doing this presentation. You guys were fun. Thanks for participating and chiming in. Yeah, thanks. And then logic puzzles are up here if you want to grab one too. All right, great. Thank you. Victoria.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I did just want to let everybody know that if you are interested in hearing about more like Mancos Wellness Talks or other retreats and resources that I have with Cloud Goddess to give to you, you can sign up. There's some email sign-up sheets on the table, so if you didn't fill that out, you can, and I'll add you to my email newsletter. I will also get Anna's talk, the presentation, and then the video up on my website, and that will be cloudgoddess.com/resources. That'll be up there. There's also other like business, digital marketing resources, the cloud, and then there's other wellness resources on there. That's the goddess part. So please go to my website and join my email newsletter. And then next month, we will be having our third Mancos Wellness Talk of the season. And we have Monique Alvarez. She owns The Abundant Life in Cortez. This is now a second generation business that she's come back home and she's taking over the business from her mom. And so they're doing a lot of herbal items and remedies and healthcare type things in the store, and they're also opening up a socialization and eating type area in the store. So it's going to be more of like a community hub in Cortez for all of us. But she'll be talking on nutrition and herbals. So it's the third Wednesday. It's Wednesday, the 20th of September at 6 o'clock, right here at the library. So thank everybody for coming,
Thank
and
you.
hope to see you next time.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you.